Engagement, participation, focus, whatever you want to call it, the idea is this. If you want successful meetings that people feel are a good use of time and that create value for your organization, then those people in those meetings must be doing something there. Now, what does engagement look like and how do you get it? Recently, a client asked me just this question. She said, "Elise, how can I tell if the people are engaging in my meetings? Is there an app that it can monitor that?" Well, it's a lot simpler than that. You can tell if people are engaged by watching to see if they're actively doing something, if they are literally engaging with each other and the meeting content. Now, this engagement can take many forms. The person who is presenting, the person who's taking notes, the person tracking time or filling out sticky notes, and yes, the person actively listening are all engaging. And because there are so many ways to increase engagement in meetings, and it's such a big challenge for so many people, how to increase engagement in meetings is the subject for a whole course of its own. In this course, you'll learn the basics, including the 5 steps to creating engagement in meetings, how to start well, where we'll talk about how critical it is to get everyone engaged in the first 5 minutes, and I'll show you how to do that, and ending well, where we'll cover how the way that you close your meetings can cement the business value you need and set the stage for future engagement. At every phase of your meeting, before, during, and after, and for every topic during the meeting, you have an opportunity to engage the group. So before we get into the 5 steps, let's just start here. When you think about the last meeting you held, what could you have done to increase engagement? At each step, was there a more engaging way you could have achieved the same goal? And going forward, ask yourself this question as you design your meetings. And you'll quickly discover there are all kinds of ways to meet that are way more interesting and fun than the humdrum gatherings you've experienced in the past. Now, let's look at the 5 high-level steps for increasing engagement, the 5 key concepts you need to keep in mind that apply to every meeting in every context, regardless of the specific techniques you use. Number 1. Define the desired engagement for the meeting. Well, when you put it on a list like this, step 1 seems like too obvious. And still, this is the step I see people miss most often because it means you need to get very specific. Here's an example. Meeting organizers often send out invites that look something like this. Come to our Q4 planning meeting. What's the desired engagement there? As far as I can tell, it's show up and keep a seat warm. Now, here's an invite for that same meeting from a leader who wants people to engage. Review Q3 performance and come to the Q4 planning meeting with your number 1 lesson learned and up to 3 recommendations for Q4. This second invite asks for specific engagement. Before the meeting even begins, people are actively working on it, and they'll show up knowing that they have work to share. Which brings us to step 2. Once you've defined the specific kind of engagement you want, you need to, ask for that engagement. This ask can come in many formats. You can ask people to complete preparation assignments, to reply to questions, to participate and contribute, all the obvious stuff. You can ask them to abide by ground rules or do a meeting job like facilitate or take notes or keep track of time or be your vibes watcher. The best asks engage other people in making sure the meeting succeeds. They have a job to do. Nancy Settle-Murphy, a leading expert in training and facilitation for large virtual teams, always tells leaders to keep people multitasking on task to make sure everyone has a job to do. So if you want people to engage, get specific about what that should look like and then ask them to do that job. Asking for engagement is only step 2. So to illustrate why that's not enough, let me tell you about the statistics class I took. It was a late evening class with about 40 people, most of whom fell asleep within the first 15 minutes. And the instructor had fallen into this habit of writing out what he was teaching on the board with his back to the class. And, every few minutes he would say, "Questions? No questions." And then he would keep writing, like he never even turned around. Now, the kind of engagement he wanted and why it was relevant to all of us in the class was totally clear. He didn't have a problem with the first 2 steps, but he blew past step 3, which is make space for engagement. If you ask for engagement, you must make sure there is time and space for people to give it to you. Now, we'll talk more about making space during the lecture on timing. But first, let's look at what this implies for your agenda. For example, if each person gives a 2-minute update in a 30-minute meeting, with 2 people, that's 4 minutes for updates and 26 for business. With 4 minutes, it's 8 minutes for updates and 22 for business. With 6 people, now I'm down to 18 minutes for business. And with my group of 10, my meeting only has 10 minutes for getting work done. And it's basically a joke. That's totally not going to work. So when you add people to the meeting, you have to choose. Do you change the kind of engagement you're asking for? Or do you make the meeting longer? Can you get people engaged in larger groups? Yeah, absolutely. But you have to do it very differently. The next 2 steps are a bit less obvious. 4, acknowledge contributions. Thank you. At the very least, people who make a contribution to the meeting deserve some kind of thank you. Even better, when a contribution is substantive, write it down. Why? First, when you acknowledge a contribution, you let that person know that they were heard and that they have relevance to the team. Second, for many individuals, speaking up in a group means taking a personal risk. Some people are shy and some environments are hostile, which means it takes courage to put yourself out there. Now, when that contribution is glossed over or dismissed, or when you haven't even made time for it, not even brought it up at all during the meeting, people learn that the risk was not worth the effort. It is not safe to risk making a contribution in a group that doesn't appreciate that effort. Finally, for any of you who care about employee retention, studies show that employees who feel appreciated are the most loyal. Saying thank you in meetings is the easiest way to inject regular appreciation into your organization's culture. Okay, the final step in our 5-step engagement process applies to all phases of the meeting, the before, the during, and the after, and even into the next meeting. And that is, whatever you've asked people to contribute, make sure you use what you receive. Engagement for engagement's sake is a mistake. Strategic planning workshops are notorious for failing in this way, and not because they fail to be engaging. It's possible to run a fabulously engaging workshop to build out your company's strategic plan, only to then have that plan sit on the shelf for a year. Now, if all the exciting thinking you did in the meeting doesn't actually change what you do when you leave that meeting, it's wasted effort, and everyone involved will know it. Pretty soon, that great engagement you built up in your first few meetings will dry up, and in some cases, you'll find that people won't even show up to your next meeting. So when it comes to engagement, the rule is use it or lose it. Okay, quick recap. You can tell that someone is engaged in your meeting when they are actively doing something in service of that meeting. Now, active engagement can come in many forms, including speaking and presenting and talking and taking notes and tracking time and reading and writing and commenting and filling out sticky notes and active listening and more. So leaders can build that engagement into the meeting by following these 5 steps. Number 1, define the desired engagement. 2, ask for that engagement. 3, make space for engagement. 4, acknowledge contributions. And 5, use what you receive. These steps apply to all phases of a meeting, but they're especially critical for the bookends. So in the next few lectures, we'll focus specifically on engaging ways to start and end meetings well.